screen starts glowing and the film starts rolling. You wanna be knowing what you might be in for. So give the show a listen and find out what you're missing. Put yourself in position for the easy good score.
Hey listeners, welcome to the 241st episode of The Goods, a film podcast. This is the start of a theme month. Now, listeners who have been around a while will recall that in February's I run a theme month. And then is it July or August, Brian? You run a theme month.
Typically one or the other. Sometimes it bleeds into September.
And the way these theme months work is we, for 5 weeks, will choose some movie or movies on a theme and dig a little deeper into an idea than we normally do, just episode to episode, and watch things that are grouped in ways that are either substantial or trivial, as the case may be. Brian, what are some of your favorite and some of the more ridiculous theme months that we've done?
So an example of a substantial one might be Time Loop Month, I guess, where it's actually like a feature of the structure of the film. The less consequential have included Month, where does the film have a name of a month in the title? What comes to mind when you look back on our cavalcade of theme months, Dan?
We've had some good ones. I usually try to have mine be both like something I'm interested in, but also like push me a little bit out of my comfort zone. So we did Dad Month last year on my theme month. So that was movies looking at fatherhood from different lenses and tones and genres. Obviously because I'm a dad, you know, and I had recently lost my father. And then I think the one that gave us the most meat to discuss was we did Movies About Making Movies Month, which we had so many we wanted to talk about, we just turned it into a double month.
Right, we decided, I pitched to Dan, like with a week and a half left in the month, what if 2 months?
Because we both had things we wanted to talk about we weren't going to get to cover. But this time I'm going kind of high concept, or at least there's more structure to it than just like a phrase and then go wild with the phrase or the high level pitch.
Yeah, this is a big brain month. This is going to be some mental gymnastics. It's a little more involved than March of the Penguins.
I think it's going to be easier to listen to than it is to plan, Brian. I think most of the work falls on us and not the listeners. At least that's the way it should be, you would hope. So our theme month this month is, I'm calling it Musical Decades Month. So this is something that I cooked up. So it occurred to me, I have enjoyed learning more about musicals, watching more musicals, spending time with musicals, and also just in general learning film history and the history of the medium. And, you know, it's been about 100 years since the talkie was invented, since synchronized sound became a standard part of the film production process. Not exactly. It really started to take hold like right around the early 30s. So a little less than 100 years, but we're coming up on it. So you had, you know, All Quiet on the Western Front, right around, I think that was the third Best Picture winner. So this was also right around the time the Oscars started. And obviously it was the 30s where talkies really came into life. And so I was like, okay, the 30s, well, that gives us 10 decades. We have 5 weeks, 10 decades. What if we talked about a movie from every decade in the history of the synchronized sound musical, and we hit one from every decade, 2 a week, and each week the 2 that we picked had some link or some mechanism by which we could discuss something. And that was about as far as we got. So now each week we're going to be picking 2 musicals from decades that have not yet been covered. And so this week we're going to be covering the 30s and the 50s. and it's going to be you'll see what we'll talk about, but it's going to have to do with kind of the emergence of the studio system musical.
Yes, and so quickly, just a couple thoughts on this premise, and you'll get the hang of it as we go along. But it feels very monumental because each decade can only get used once. We're going to cover every decade once, but that means that each decade can only be covered once. And so once we dibs that, our co-host is locked out.
Sort of. I mean, we can talk about other musicals from that decade in the future, but for the purposes of this exercise, once you choose, like if Brian chooses a 1960s movie, I can't do West Side Story. I can't do anything 60s going forward. So that's true.
So one movie and one movie alone represents each decade. And then just the other thing to say, which I'm sure I'll return to a few times throughout the month, is that I've been watching musicals all along. I've loved musicals like as far back as I can remember. And so then to have the last couple months, Dan be like, hey, you know what's kind of cool sometimes is to play show tunes in the background while you're working. Have you ever done that? It's like I have done that every day for like 15 years, Dan.
Well, you don't have to make me sound like an idiot when you talk about it, Brian.
No, I'm sorry, but it's just, again, it's like the Bane thing of, you merely adopted the darkness. This is something that I've carried with me. So welcome to the fold, Dan. Dan is not an idiot. Dan is an intelligent, upright person. And always good to have more fans of musicals.
That's right. So on that note, I thought for the kickoff of Musical Decades Month, talking about old movie musicals, who better to have on the pod than the man that I've read who has written the most about movie musicals, at least among non-professional critics. I don't know how you would describe yourself, but we have Hunter Allen, who writes reviews on Kinemalogue, joining us here today. Welcome, Hunter.
Oh, hi. Hi, Dan. Good to be here. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
It's a good Bane, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back.
In fact, not only are we having Hunter on here, but Hunter was the one who conceived of this specific pairing of films. I kind of sent him an email saying, hey, this is an upcoming theme month. I have invented a thing and I don't have sufficient mill to grist. What is the phrase? I don't have sufficient things to actually put into the structure that I've conceived of. Do you have any ideas? And this was one of the ideas that he pitched. And I thought it was a good representative of the 30s, of the 50s, and the evolution of the early musical. So that will be 42nd Street from 1933 and American in Paris from 1951.
Yeah, I just thought they were complementary in the sense that they're not really similar content-wise, of course, but they represent two separate strains of the film musical as film musicals were evolving from the 30s into the 50s. So, 42nd Street, it's not the first Busby Berkley movie. It's not the first movie that he choreographed. But it is like the first that he is really known for. He actually choreographed, I believe, 4 movies, starting with Whoopi in 1930. So how much do you know about the history of film music, like the very early history of film musicals?
So that's a good question. And a few months ago, I was wandering my local library, that beloved institution of ours, and I saw a thick-spined book entitled The Movie Musical by Janine Basinger, who is a film critic or film historian or something. And it's kind of like in my sweet spot of books in that it's not academic, but it's also like not just a coffee table. Here are some pictures of movies you've heard of. Like it's pretty in depth on the history of the movie musical. And I haven't read the whole thing, but I did get a digital copy of it and have read through portions of it. But the answer is not very much. So I will be sprinkling in some things I've read from this book as we go, but I do not know very much. I mean, even Busby Berkley was a name I'd heard of, but I couldn't even have told you anything about him prior to this week.
William Enos Berkley. Where Busby comes from, I think nobody knows. Like, it's literally unknown how he acquired the nickname Busby. Anyway, he comes from, a stage background. A lot of people come from a stage background going into the film musical in this area. I guess all areas really, but especially early on, obviously, because you could actually talk and sing on the stage when you could not up until around 1926, 1927 in film. But that proved extremely popular, as you might imagine. People singing on film. Jazz Singer, of course, extremely popular movie. Everybody wanted to get in on that, and they did very quickly, despite, as anyone who's seen Singing in the Rain knows, sound recording not being very good or even competent at the time. So you have a lot of movies, especially in 1929 and 1930 especially, where they released possibly over 100 musicals. Just the American studios released 100 musicals in 1930. And it burned people out really fast. And if you've ever seen any musicals from 1930, you can see why they would burn people out very fast. Things like Hollywood Review and Whoopi, as noted. They're pretty review style, but they're also like extremely primitive. So to get they're very locked down. It's basically just filming a stage play, except without the magic that goes into the stagecraft that goes into that. So it's not even like as interesting as watching a stage play, and it sounds worse. And that came to a point where people actually kind of turned against musicals a little bit, and they stopped making money very quickly. I'm not familiar with another another genre fad that burned out this fast, within just a couple of years. We still have superhero movies,
Right. Even slashers, they probably had a few years in the glory.
Yeah, slashers had 4 years. They had a couple more years, and then they came back with Nightmare on Elm Street. But that's another story. But the musical, did not die. Obviously, it came back in 1933 with 42nd Street. For whatever reason, that Warner Brothers was extremely confident in this movie, despite it being very similar to a lot of other movies that had failed, being a backstager, with, just the problems of chorines and stage directors and ingenues and your juveniles played by Dick Powell. That's going to be a thing for many movies to come until he winds his way into film noir movies. And it was a big hit after all, despite what you might, or what, first principles would tell you, it actually really was quite popular. And I think the best way to explain why it was popular is the last 15 minutes of the movie, which has 3 really, really excellent Busby Berkley vignettes, music videos to these Warren and Durbin songs. And they're just leaps ahead of anything the film musical had been doing prior to that. Even though, you can trace them back to stuff that Florence Ziegfeld and his crew was doing on Broadway. It's similar in its aesthetic, very aren't girls hot? That's the main theme of a lot of them. But yeah, it became very popular, and then that sort of Busby Berkley chorus work, it's like surrealistic chorus work, editing driven chorus work. So it's not just like a stage show. You can get the camera in there. You can see all sorts of, interesting angles on the stuff there. The stereotypical Busby Berkley shot is a circle of people arranged in a circle and sort of an iris, shot from above, which you can't really do on stage. And I found it interesting that 42nd Street has a stage adaptation that came out in the 60s or 70s, I think. And they were a little flummoxed, like, how do we even do this movie on the stage? And like they came up with the idea of like just a giant mirror so you could see this circular arrangement of human bodies the way it's meant to be seen, which is from the top, which you know, it's and it's some really cool stuff. Then you have, like I said, there's that strain of film musicals, which is very, like I said, very chorus based, image based. Maybe I guess you could say to some. I mean, they're all image based, but and then you have the other strain, which arises actually at the same time in 1933 from RKO. Sort of in a very embryonic form with Flying Down to Rio. You have Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers musicals, and that's probably the emblematic of the other strain. And it's not like I say it's not there yet in Flying Down to Rio, but it gets there, you know, by, you know, Swing Time, Shall We Dance, what have you, which is much more focused on storytelling with dance and in duet numbers, pas de deux, I guess you'd say, where you have like actual characterization and integration of narrative into the dance numbers. Not always, obviously, but there's still a lot of nonsense just going on in those movies. But they want to tell usually a romance because that's the easiest thing to tell with dance for obvious reasons. And eventually you get the Astaire Rogers movies, that line of 10 movies, I believe. And then Gene Kelly comes along, him and Stanley Donen come, and they take that Fred Astaire and his usual choreographer, Hermes Pan, that style, and they run with it themselves. And they actually get very film technology with it, I guess. So they actually have like, you have CoverGirl. I think that's very important in Gene Kelly's filmography. An American Paris, obviously being a Gene Kelly movie, which has him dancing with a double exposure of himself. It represents in that film a sort of, you know, inner conflict, of course. And then you get to An American Paris, and that is the really grand, maybe even the apex in some respects of this kind of emotive dancing. You don't get it to the very end of An American Paris, really. Which is the other similarity between these movies, is that they go on and they are saving their best for last, is the charitable way to put it. And there's some uncharitable ways to put it, which I wouldn't want to do, but yeah, there's like, why isn't there more stuff in these movies? Sometimes I do think with these two particular films. American Paris less so. Rewatching, I was kind of surprised there was more in that than I remember. More cool stuff. In fact, like I think we'll get to it. We'll get to it. I've talked long enough.
A couple things in response to what you said, Hunter. So my background with early musicals, I did film studies in undergrad, and so took a number of film history classes, but one teacher in particular was very into the early talkie musicals. And so in that class, I think we watched Hollywood Review of 1929, Gold Diggers of 1933, Broadway Melody of 1936. So a handful of these. I think it will be interesting as the month goes along to talk about, as you said, that musicals have kind of come in and out of style over the decades. There have been some decades where they were just huge, and like for one movie to stand in for the 60s when like half of the Best Picture winners that decade were musicals, it almost seems criminal.
Yeah, it's hard. That is hard to like pick a single movie, even just within a genre, to represent an entire decade. I mean, it kind of works, and you do have like there is like a second sort of, not quite death, but like coma that musicals go into in the late 50s. And maybe like that's why I say American Paris is sort of the peak. I was actually looking at some like box office numbers. Like it made more money than Singing in the Rain the next year. That even though Singing in the Rain I think is probably more beloved now, It's very much the archetypal. That's the musical. If you watch one musical, watch Singing in the Rain. But it made less money than An American in Paris, and I'm very sure that the rest of Gene Kelly's movies in that decade made less money than An American in Paris. I don't know if that's true of like all musicals. South Pacific, I think, made more, but which is a travesty. But
that's some terrific context. So a couple of thoughts. Thank you, Brian, for kind of also sharing your thoughts, your experience with some of these early musicals. And yes, it is hard to capture the essence of a genre within a decade. And I will say one thing we found with these theme months, and I think can be true here, is it doesn't need to be the what is the musical of the 70s? You don't need to choose that. It just, we will cover something from the 70s. And I think, Brian, when we do these theme months, I usually, where applicable, try to do one that's kind of more almost history lesson type. Let's hit a classic or two and kind of understand where we're coming from. And so this time we're doing that first, but that doesn't need to be every single. We don't need to have this be a tracing of all of the history of musicals.
Sure. And I also just want to say we can continue to talk musicals outside the bounds of the month. And indeed, we have in the past. I looked back at our records thinking about what could we possibly do as this month goes ahead, because we've got, this rule of tie the decades together. And as we get later in the month, we're going to have fewer decades to pick from. So we may have to link the 40s to the 2010s or something. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where the chips fall. But I looked through our records and we've covered musical decades fairly well. If my tally is accurate, Dan has had 21 musical selections over the course of the podcast, and I've had 36.
There you go. So we'll have good stuff to cover, but kind of laying out what some of the theses of this episode will be. Thank you for doing so, Hunter, where the two kind of similar but contrasting ideas. So both, what ties them together are they both are evolving beyond just the term proscenium, just placing a camera as if you were looking at a stage, but from different sort of philosophies and approaches. And I think you did a good job of summarizing it. And yeah, this book that I read, the one called The Movie Musicals, this is kind of what she had to say about the two styles, one being the Berkley style, which, as you said, less integrated into the plot, more kind of geometric and chorus based, and whereas the Astaire style being the other style, more integrated into the story, more focused on leads and the psychology of the characters. But just to read a little snippet here, to compare what Astaire brought to musicals with what Berkley did, it's useful to first compare Top Hat and 42nd Street, which you did, Hunter, thank you. Astaire is essentially the auteur of Top Hat, as Berkley is of 42nd Street, even though neither of them directed his movie. 42nd Street is rooted in America during the Depression, and Top Hat is rooted in an elegant world with a European setting. 42nd Street has songs and dances that almost all come at the very end of the movie in back-to-back presentation. They're not related to the story or integrated into it. There is a frank and open divorce of music and plot, and the songs exist only for their entertainment value. In Top Hat, the songs and dances are mostly integrated into the plot. They demonstrate emotions, as in Cheek to Cheek, or further the plot, as in No Strings. They introduce the dramatic or narrative possibilities of dance to the musical. So, pretty much exactly what you said, Hunter, was here in this book that I read. But I think maybe the way that we can structure this conversation is talk a little bit about 42nd Street and then a little bit about American Paris, and then we can maybe bring it home. Before we dive in, I meant to open with this and then I didn't, but I just wanted to say, Hunter, first of all, I'll blow smoke for just a second. I like to read writers who are a little idiosyncratic, cover a mix of modern movies and classic movies, and who kind of come at the material with a blend of sort of subjective response, but also bringing in a sort of more cerebral approach to the material. and kind of considering film history and like, where does this fall culturally and stuff. And, there's not too many people who check all of those boxes online. I mean, we both read Tim Brayton. I think he definitely does some of that. He's a critic. And most of them aren't like what I would consider like staff columnists, like the classic film critic, like your Eberts or whatever. But Tim Brayton does it. I read this guy named Scout Tafoya, and he's a real maverick. And I've really enjoyed reading him. I mean, Mike D'Angelo, and everybody's kind of got their own quirks and opinions and can be a little cantankerous. And Hunter, I think you write that way too. And so I just want to express gratitude for your writing in Kinemalogue. And I will say, out of all the people that I read, you're the only one who regularly engages with me in my writing and commenting and challenging me to be a better writer. So I'm always grateful to correspond with you and to get to do something with you. And thank you for that. And then I also wanted to give you a platform to maybe just give like what's your relationship with movie musicals?
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that, Dan. I think my relationship with movie musicals might be similar to yours, and I think it might actually be very similar to yours, because we're like children of La La Land, right? In a lot of respects.
For sure, yeah.
Like, I mean, that was, I was obviously like aware that all these things existed. I wasn't like not into them, but I watched like things like Singing in the Rain, and which is great. But it's like I'd done like the survey level stuff, and with La La Land, after La La Land, in bursts, I like, you know what, I'm gonna watch like this, and then I finally just started like doing. I don't know. Once you've watched enough, you just realize like, oh, this sounds interesting to me. Not maybe no one's ever even heard of it. It has like 50 logs on Letterboxd, but it sounds interesting to me. So then I'm gonna like watch Sonja Henie movies or whatever, and watch this Norwegian lady ice skate while she has a rictus smile and doesn't act very well. But it's interesting to me, and I think that's how people should go with like any like movement within cinema or film genre or whatever. Just like go with your own flow, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of people just like, I've got to watch all 100 movies on the Sight and Sound list. Like, you don't. Like they engage in things like, or I need to watch the musicals that are on the Sight and Sound list. It's like, well, you probably, I mean, if you want to watch musicals, yeah, I mean, like Singing in the Rain is the one that's like way high up on there. But it's also like, they all engaged in like, I don't even know if what you kind of voting you would call this is sort of strategic voting, but like not even really. It's just like, I want musicals to be represented on the Sight and Sound list. What is everyone else going to put on their ballot? They're going to put Singing in the Rain. Is that my actual favorite musical? I hope it's not literally every person's favorite musical. It's not my favorite musical, even of the 50s. That would be Daddy Longlegs. But,
who shares a star with An American in Paris, right?
Leslie Caron, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's another musical that takes very little advantage of her being French, actually. It just starts in France because she's French. I was going to say it's actually a lot like that, but it's like that in that, we've talked about Daddy Longlegs before. Like everybody like gives that movie a lot of grief for its problematic relationship, I guess. If they seen An American in Paris, like I think it's much worse from both directions.
Both these movies have elements that have dated them some. I mean, but it's kind of a depiction of what it was at the time, so but this book that I kind of have already quoted once and will probably quote again, I almost actually didn't even read the book because the introduction, she talks about not liking La La Land. And Whoa. I was like, oh, come on.
I mean, I can see where she's coming from, but still.
her take was something I actually hadn't really thought too much about, but it was that, so I thought it was just going to be, oh, it's just pastiche, which I've heard people say, and I don't really buy, because I think it's doing it so well and in such an interesting modern way. But her take was that it can't decide if it's an integrated musical or not, because it kind of opens up as it's an integrated musical, and then it's basically not an integrated musical, and it just has an identity crisis, which I see where she's coming from, even though that doesn't bother me at all. I don't think that really detracts from the film.
I don't know if I'd agree with that. Oh, no, I don't know if I agree with the priors either. It's like I've actually come to integration in a musical is overrated.
Interesting. I think there are a lot of purists out there. Well, at least this writer is a purist, I think about it. Like, that is achievement. If you have integrated the music into the story.
Yeah.
You know?
Like South Pacific's an integrated musical. Camelot's an integrated musical. What is Paint Your Wagon is an integrated musical. Hooray for the integrated musical.
Okay, one more aside. So we have talked in the past on this pod about sung through musicals. We talked recently about one that was mostly sung through, which was The Last 5 Years. And I remain in a state of, what do you call it when you have two competing ideas that you can't resolve?
Cognitive dissonance or something?
That's the word I was thinking of. Yeah. I might not be using it correctly. A state of cognitive dissonance or irresolution about sung through musicals, because I never want to like get excited about a song in a sung through musical, but when everything is sung, the whole experience kind of has an arch emotionality to it. So Hunter, I thought you could maybe adjudicate a little bit. What are your thoughts on sung through musicals?
I think it flattens everything into mush.
Okay.
That's kind of how it's kind of how I feel about it. I know a lot of people really love sung through musicals, but it's when I don't know. It's mush. It becomes musical mush, especially like it's very difficult, I think, to like put like a full tilt effort into an hour and a half, 2 hours of music and lyrics, and you're probably not going to, so you don't.
There are only so many notes you can hear in an hour.
Yeah, you end up getting some repetition, or at least like a sense of it losing its punch and feeling similar to other sections, I guess.
I mean, I guess I could listen to 20 music videos in 2 hours. That might be fine. It's just like it's very difficult to connect everything in a film narrative with song. I'm sure somebody has done it, or even a stage narrative. I'm sure it happens, and a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I just don't. It's not my fave. It's not my favorite. Into the Woods is sung through, right?
I feel like it's close. I mean, that's a Sondheim one.
Yeah, that's a Sondheim, which I've seen on stage, but it's like 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's like I can only sort of remember. I think you're right. I mean, we talked a couple that were close to sung through, like Dan observed that about Sweeney Todd, which was a Sondheim that we covered. That is broken up a little bit. Same boat with Nightmare Before Christmas, where they're almost always singing, but not always. There are bits and pieces in between. Some that are like truly sung through, I would say, are Hamilton and Les Miserables. So I am on pretty much the same page as you, Hunter, that you get taken out of it a little bit when it's constantly singing. It's like you can't appreciate songs when it's all kind of one continuous song, or it's harder to anyway.
Yeah, well, you know what they say. The cliche is, when it's too emotional to say it, sing it. Well, if you're singing all the time, then where's the punch? Where's the quantum leap there? And I mean, to be honest, if it's too emotional for singing, you dance, which is actually that's what I like about musicals. Like, we call them musicals. Maybe we should call them dance films, and or terpsichorean cinema or something, because that is what I find most appealing about musicals usually, and it's probably why I gravitate towards Golden Age musicals, which were more dance forward and sequence forward, rather than musicals even into starting in the 60s are let's sing. We're not going to have necessarily like a lot of choreography, and there's still choreography, but like a lot of complicated dance choreography to go along with it. It's just going to be Julie Andrews singing a song, and like that's great in Sound of Music. It's less great in it's still pretty cool in like My Fair Lady, but weird singing choices.
That could be a thread we can trace, Brian.
Or Dr. Dolittle, which I still like.
Yeah, you had two defenders of Dr. Dolittle on the pod right
but
now.
I don't like the music in it. I like the goofy animal rights comedy.
Yep, we did a Dr. Dolittle episode a couple months ago. So still fresh in the mind. And yeah, we talked about Rex Harrison's recitative approach to singing.
It's just doing Henry Higgins again. it's and they have a romance in that movie just because My Fair Lady did. It's such a mistake. That part's a mistake. I like all the stuff with Doolittle, and they actually figure out an economy of how his life works with these animals, providing medical attention to the animals in exchange for labor on his estate. And he almost kisses a seal.
That the best romance in that movie.
Yes, the romance with the seal is much more authentic than with the woman.
Yes, it is.
But I like the real animals that he talks to, and then when he'll go underwater and there are like puppets under there that he'll talk to. It's like two different approaches. I like them both.
This is good. I'm going to do one more tangent here, which is you talked about the real animals. And so my tangent is I watched the Chaplin film, The Gold Rush, with my kids and my wife for the first time. I've actually never seen that movie before. I've seen, of course, a couple of the famous clips, but that movie, like 3 minutes in, Chaplin is walking through an icy cave and out comes a real bear. And I like practically fell off the couch. I was like, it's a real bear. This is so good. I love this. It brought me back to Brian. What was the 12 Monkeys? When I again, there was a real bear in there, and I was like, we used to be a country. We used to have real bears in movies.
It's a double-edged sword. You got to keep the bear, train the bear.
Yeah, it's probably better for bears, like writ large, that they're not.
Arguably, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
because like then they just live in a declining habitat where they eventually die.
Let bears pay the bear tax, I say.
I paid the Homer tax. But okay, so we can talk about the actual movies here. So 42nd Street, 1933. I like this little snippet from that book I mentioned. Of all the film history made easy concepts, the one that has the strongest claim to truth is in 1933, 42nd Street brought on the rebirth of the musical film. When 42nd Street was released in March of 1933, audiences did fall in love with it. It was a musical wow, with its gobsmacking musical numbers, its romantic duo of Ruby Keeler and Dick Powell, and its go out there and become a star backstage story. 42nd Street was fresh and funny, visually staggering, an easy marketing place for the rebirth of the musical, which actually had not been dead, but was only playing possum, as it were. So that kind of era that Hunter was talking about, where in the first couple of years of sound, they kind of burned out on musicals, and this was the comeback. So,
which it's kind of funny to think about, we've had sound for like 5 years at this point, to have it burn out and make a comeback in that window. I hadn't even put that together before, but funny. It reminds me of the video game crash of 1983. Yeah. It's like, what do you mean by 1983? It was crashing already, and then it comes back with the NES in 1985. So there can be some hairpin turns.
Early in a medium, for sure. Yeah,
that's a good analogy. Yeah,
this is a pre-code story, and I will say, sometimes when something is pre-code, I don't really notice it, but this is definitely pre-code. It's pretty horny.
Yeah, about 5 minutes in, I was thinking the first line of this Wikipedia article is going to say, it's a pre-code ...
And it's a backstage musical about putting on a Broadway play. So the premise is it's essentially contemporary to when it was made, but it feels like a period piece because it takes place in the Great Depression. I'm always fascinated, like the real-time depictions of these historical events that now are period fodder. Like Brian, when we inevitably talk Casablanca, one of the things that I find very fascinating about that film is the way that it talks about the war, given that the war was still ongoing, because that was what, 1940, was it 5 or something like that?
I think it was like 1942.
Yeah, it's
Like they didn't know quite how it was going to go.
it was definitely made in 42.
Okay. So not early in the war.
But yeah, it is cool to watch World War II movies where they didn't know we'd won yet. And they also don't seem to have like a really like they certainly don't have a God's eye view understanding of like force dispositions and stuff. Like I've seen a movie where that predicted that the Battle of Britain was lost, and I have seen a movie, a guy named Joe with Spencer Tracy, where they just baldly assert that the German Navy has an aircraft carrier that must be destroyed. That's what the movie's about.
Interesting.
Or half the movie is about it. It's like the Death Star of Nazi Germany. It's like they did not have a functional aircraft carrier, but they could have in 1943. Who knows?
Looking into the far future, yeah.
Yeah.
And this play, which will be called Pretty Lady, and I want to say that Pretty Lady, every scene, it's about something new. Like, I don't think there's actually like a coherent thought about what this in-universe musical is actually about.
It is incomprehensible.
I was thinking about the musical that they're getting ready for in High School Musical, where it's like, what is this show?
Good comparison, Brian. Yeah.
I just always wonder about the musicals within the musicals within the film musicals. Like, is it just backstagers about putting on a show all the way down, like recursively infinite? Is the musical within it a backstager about putting on a musical, about putting on a musical, about putting on a musical? And it's
Turtles all the way down. Yeah. Brian, I like that comparison to High School Musical, because when I was seeing some of this Busby Berkley directed musical sequences at the end, or I guess not directed, but choreographed and designed sequences at the end, I was thinking of Teen Beach Movie. Some of they do some like really nifty stuff with like shifting sets, and then like that opening number about the surf crazy. They do some really cool like top down stuff with like the beach towels and the balls and the umbrellas.
And the surfboards.
Oh, yeah. The surfboards like make the lines and then they make a circle and stuff. I was like, oh, so like the people who were making this either intuitively through osmosis or like actually were channeling the Berkeley style. So the director in this is a character named Julian Marsh. And the deal with Julian Marsh is that he is going to die if he makes another musical. But he's like, I will do it anyways.
He's a basket case.
So I loved this character. Before you came on the mic, Dan, I was talking with Hunter about my own film production, film directing experience this past year, and he said, "Did you find common ground with Julian Marsh?" And we'll be talking dribs and drabs of things that I saw in this character, but yeah, he's very frazzled. He reminded me a little of like, he's got the Walt Disney kind of look with like the little mustache, or like Clark Gable a little bit. I don't know. Just like this period of man who's in the film business, and he's just constantly very put upon, and like, this is the most important thing in the world that he's doing. I was also thinking of J.K. Simmons in Whiplash. He's not that mean, but he whips himself into a froth like that. Like, this is what has to happen. You gotta be on his tempo.
There are a couple times where he comes close to that. He's not throwing chairs or smacking Miles Teller in the face, but he comes pretty close in a couple of scenes.
He's got to make his money back. He lost it all on Black Friday, explicitly, because everybody is crippled by the Great Depression in this movie.
Right, and something that he mentions is that he makes these shows, he directs them, and he casts these actors, but then who becomes the star? It's the actors become the stars. And so early on, he gives voice to that as one facet of his anxiety, is like, nobody really appreciates all the work that he does as the director.
And the movie is funded by this producer character named Abner, who's a great movie fat cat. He's got like the great portundity and bald head of like a stereotypical movie rich guy.
Yeah.
And he, like, the second scene of the movie is him essentially setting up like an affair with a young actress so that he can make her a star. He's couching her. And this actress is named Dorothy. And an interesting thing is, like, none of these characters end up being outright villainous. They all end up having like some sort of antagonistic forces to the characters we're most rooting for, but maybe Abner because he's just like a presumptuous fat guy, but he's not like aggressively malicious. Nobody here is an outright villain.
Right. I mean, he's a lech, but he's framed as a silly person. Like, he's not in power. He's being led around by the nose just as much as anybody else. And he's like a known part of the system. Like, there need to be people like this in the system as it stands or stood at that time. It's like he's bankrolling everything. And it would, like, the machine would not move if he wasn't greasing it with the financials.
Yeah, they're at least hypothetically they're taking as much advantage of him. I do really like the scene with he's played by Guy Kibbe. He's funny. He's in a lot of movies. I do like it later where he is very excited to see all the tryouts of all the chorus girls, but very rapidly is like sighing, finding it tedious.
Yeah, he says after 3 weeks of this, legs aren't nothing to me but something to stand on.
That's right.
Good line. And they all strike a deal. There's like this cavalcade of crew, like producers. I didn't quite know what all of them did, but there are these people who pop in and out, these characters, mostly men.
There's a couple guys whose job is to shout what the director says louder than he says it.
Yeah. The guy with the glasses is the writer. He's
okay.
The writer of whatever this is.
There's one guy who has some of these deliveries that were just cracking me up, and he's like the cynical old guy. And now I'm going to scrub through the credits and see if I can figure out which one he is. And I had no idea what his actual role was.
Was he the one who was always drunk?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah, there was a guy who was like always sitting down and he was kind of weaving, but he would always get these barbs that he got to say that were funny.
Do you have like kind of buggy eyes?
Well, there's the one guy whose eyes kind of pop out of his head with the little mustache. That's George Stone, I think. And then there was the guy who was always munching a cigar, who I think is the drunk one.
Yeah, Ned Sparks. Yeah, he's funny. He's in a lot of stuff too.
I liked him quite a bit.
He's in some Capra movie too, Lady for a Day. He's very, very funny in that.
But one thing, this is where I'll say, because I mentioned there's like a lot of guys here, it's that it threw me with all of the characters, but most especially with the women, that there's like, it's a pretty decent sized ensemble. There's like a lot of characters playing small to medium sized roles. And they have similar, like that early 30s dame look with like kind of the short bob hair and that just kind of roundish face that made you a movie star in the time, or that many movie stars at the time had. And there were definitely a couple times where I'd be like, okay, wait, which one is she again? Is she the really nice one, or is she the sort of mean one? I can't remember.
Okay, I'm glad that you said that, because especially through the first half of the movie, that was throwing me for a loop. That, one, this company is huge. It's 90% women. They're all the same height, and like 3/4 of them have the dark hair. And there's a rivalry going on between this girl who has just arrived on the scene, and, you know, she wants to climb, but she's new, and the other person is the star who's been brought in by the bold producer who he's trying to mac on, but she's like an established known person, and she's got like her own thing going on the side that we'll talk about. But yeah, it's these two, and they look too similar.
To modernize, Brian.
Right. Also, the 30s haircut, the Betty Boop and Snow White face and haircut doesn't do it for me. I don't know.
Everyone does have short hair. I like it.
Hunter's in on the look, the 30s look.
There's a blonde character who stands out because she is kind of a funny One, she's got a lot of dialogue with this guy who I thought might be the assistant director. He's sort of like the protege of Marsh.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure. He's like a shorter guy, but he dresses similarly to Marsh.
Yeah, he's like a shrunk down version of him. Yeah, that's Una Merkel that's the woman.
So she stuck out.
Yeah, she was never a huge deal in the 30s, but she's in a lot of movies. She's always like almost always in supporting roles, which I always found weird. I always liked Una Merkel. And of course, Ginger Rogers there.
Right.
She became very big pretty quickly after this.
Right. Because she, as you mentioned, her biggest claim to fame, at least nowadays, is that she starred opposite Fred Astaire for like a long string of extremely successful and well-regarded musicals. Sort of like a little golden era of a pairing. So yes, as Brian mentioned, there's a new person, a rising star, fresh. I guess that she's fresh off the bus. It's not quite clear, but she's still getting her sea legs in the Broadway scene, the musical scene, and this is played by Ruby Keeler.
Ruby Keeler is the ingenue, whose name I can't remember their character names. I just remember them by the name of the actors.
Right. So she is, I wrote it down, is Peggy.
Right, that's right. The heroine of this great movie. What is her name?
So Peggy is auditioning to join the chorus of this show. Because it's like, all right, we're doing auditions in 24 hours. And then like a mob shows up of dancers. And I was definitely getting some vibes of La La Land, in part just because of what you were saying, Brian, how they all like kind of look the same. They have a similar style and they're all like trying for the same thing. And it's all of their dreams to make it. And Peggy is such like I don't know exactly how you describe her. She's so innocent and so gullible. She gets sent around like, oh, go to the men's room. Oh, wait, no, that's not where you go. Oh, go to this dressing room where one of the male stars is getting dressed. But I guess the way that she ends up getting her ins is she, like these more experienced dancers who seem pretty likely to make the cut, befriend her and like take her under their wing. And so we get this audition scene where they're doing all the ladies for the chorus, and then we have the director like marching around and sitting and grumbling the whole time as they're doing the audition and getting ready for it. And like it's actually kind of frank. They're like, all right, ladies, lift up your skirt so we can look at your legs to determine if you are hot enough to be in our chorus here. If you have the sufficient leg curviness and strength to be able to do all the dances that we're going to need to do here.
It's very meat markety.
And she ends up getting in the chorus. She wasn't going to make it, but there was like, oh, we lost someone. Well, there's a lady sleeping right over there, and it happens to be Peggy. So Peggy comes and joins the chorus too.
I was wondering about the budget of this whole thing, because there's so many people in it. It's like, that's a lot of paychecks.
I was thinking about that too. And then when you see the number actually produced, it's like very elaborate. It's like more elaborate than what I've seen at the Kennedy Center, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I guess that's where, you know, the money was. I guess people didn't have TVs yet, so they spent a lot more money out of the house going to see shows.
And weirdly, they were cheaper then because there were more shows. There's more economy of scale.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like going to a show was much cheaper. Like costs like $150 now.
I know, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I think the budget they given them in the movie itself does say, I think $200,000 for like the entire production. Yeah, I think toward the end it does say, which I guess would be around what?
Probably a lot.
$4 million now, 3 or 4.
Plug it into the inflation calculator. We were doing that in we've done that for a bunch of movies, but I was thinking of what's the on the road one that we watched, Brian? Paper Moon, when they're like conning $20 and it's like, wait, that's $400 now. It's like, I would be upset about losing that $20 bill.
Yeah. And then the other movie we watched this week, they're giving French prices. And it's like, well, okay. We're in a different time and a different country.
Is 15,000 francs a little or a lot? I can't tell you.
300 francs to eat lunch. Like, what does that even mean? Are they old francs or new francs? I actually don't even remember, because at some point they changed their currency.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah, no.
the denominations of the currency.
The thrust of the okay, so now we're into the show. So everybody's cast. We have the one Dorothy character who's the lead, who got it because she's in a relationship with the producer. And then the 5 weeks of rehearsal they talk about, it's going to be the hardest 5 weeks you ever did. Great little rant by the director on how miserable it's going to be in this show. And the way the thrust of the conflict kind of comes in this sort of web of romantic intrigue. In addition to the sort of meat and potatoes, the show must go on, even though there's little hiccups type stuff. But so the Dorothy character, the original lead, in addition to having the relationship with the producer, she is covertly rekindling a romance with like her old vaudeville partner or something like that. And this is a character named Pat. He ends up becoming one of the most important characters of the movie here down the stretch. And Pat sort of befriends Peggy, and it's kind of unclear. Is he like kind of mentoring her? Is he seducing her? And the movie kind of toys with, is it A or is it B a little bit?
Yeah, so some similarities between these movies. As mentioned, they build to a big climax, which is like over and above the scope and scale of anything that's come before. But another thing is they both deal with the question of the ethics of being a kept man. It's like, should you let your girlfriend pay for your lifestyle?
And I don't know. So Hunter, when you're talking about problematic relationships, is like the power structures of these, is that kind of what you're referring to here?
Oh, I was talking about in America in Paris more. I mean, yeah, well, there's some like very obvious problematic relationships in this, like with Guy Kibbe's character, very, very close to sex work in that regard. Like, I'll pay for your musical if I get something in return. I mean, he actually literally says that. That is like literally what he says. I'll be nice to you if you are nice to me. But no, I was thinking more in terms of the love triangle in An American with Paris, as far as that goes. Just Kelly. Well, we'll get to that when we get to that.
The other aspects of this are that there's this. They keep calling him a juvenile, and I was trying to figure out like what is the implication of this.
It's just a role. Or a type.
Okay, so he's like not a tough guy.
I mean, like Dick Powell is obviously not a minor, even at this stage. He's just somebody who looks kind of boyish, and they play the 17 to 20-year-old guy who is on the dating market.
Basically, anybody in 1933 who doesn't have the Clark Gable mustache is a juvenile.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian, that's another thing we could trace throughout the decades. We've talked about like the politics of facial hair over time and what it means in society. That could be an interesting thing to check out over a century.
For sure.
So he has the thing for Peggy, and Peggy kind of seems oblivious to it. She's always like, "Oh, it's my buddy. How you doing?" But eventually they will kind of have a little bit more romantic intrigue. So you kind of have all these relationships that are kind of different people eyeing different partners as the movie goes along. And this Pat character, who's not in the play, but he's like the old vaudeville partner of the original lead, the main lead of the Dorothy character, kind of gets in the crux of it because the director finds out that Dorothy is two-timing the producer and is like, go bust the kneecaps of this Pat fella. I don't like this guy.
This was so funny because basically the whole production team knows that this boyfriend exists, this like groupie dude, Grupo, that, well, we got to keep him away from the producer. Yeah, like shut him up, keep him away.
Yeah, because it's not even the producer that sends the goons, right? It's not the angel investor who sends the goons. It's like the production assistants who are like, they predict the problem and they send goons.
Goons. Hired goons. I like the scene where they call him. It's like, this is like a good 30s era mobster type. So you kind of have this churn of these romances as the movie goes. and then we get to the climax. So Pat, the Pat guy's like, I'm gonna move to Philadelphia. I don't want to be involved in all this stuff. I got a stock job. And Brian, we were just talking about stock jobs with the last 5 years? Is that what that's called? And so he goes to Philadelphia, and then it turns out the opening night of this play, it's going to be in Philadelphia. And it's like, well, okay, I guess, is that a thing that happens? Like, do they do preview shows? Is that how these musicals work in real life?
Yeah, they do out of town preview shows. Yeah, at least going by movies, maybe it's just a device for movie plots, but I've seen it in several
gotcha
musicals.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised by that. It's like, what? You're in New York to start with, but you have to travel to Philadelphia. It's like, that just seems like a lot of logistics that I wasn't expecting. And it seemed like nobody was expecting. They're like, what? We have to go to Philadelphia?
Maybe you have to develop buzz in order to like get the people on Broadway to rent you the space, because they might want to rent to somebody. They would think that somebody else would be more profitable if they get a cut, or that maybe maybe they can't even afford the rent on it yet, unless you do some out of town previews and build up a little war chest, and then you take it to Broadway.
Okay,
could readily be in. I don't know. It might just be a movie device though.
Yeah, or it could be like you want to put on the live show, and you want to it's almost like a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of the real people in New York. I think that might actually be that.
You want to have done it in front of an audience, and I know that I've heard that particularly earlier that there was sometimes they would even gauge audience reaction to what was going on stage, and the number that they would reprise at the end would be based on what the audience in the first act responded to. So then someone who was watching the audience would come and say, oh, you got to go do this number again, because that's the number that they really liked at the beginning. And so maybe there's an aspect of figuring out how people respond to it too, and fine tuning it before you bring it to Broadway when it's the real deal or something. So I don't know. But the night before the premiere, they're in Philadelphia, and the Dorothy, the lead character, she breaks things off with the producer. They're kind of doing a big party, like a gigolo party. I don't know what you call it, in a hotel room with lots of pretty women and men too. And she's getting increasingly annoyed because she's realized she just wants to be with Pat. I was like, what's so great about Pat? Let's stop talking about Pat now. The guy who's taking the stock job. And I guess I kind of get this symbolically. It's like a character arc for Dorothy, because she goes from, oh, I'm the star, I'll do whatever it takes, I'll even sleep with the producer to get my breakout role. But now she's like, no, I'd rather be in love with the man I really want to be with, even if he's just an actor who can't even make it in Broadway, or whatever the case may be. So I guess I kind of get it. And then during this fallout, they get into an argument, and Dorothy falls and breaks her ankle. And so the producer's like, I'm so mad at her, the show's off. And the director's like, you can't do that. And then the producer's like, well, as long as she says she's sorry, then the show can still go on. So I think you're right, Brian. It's kind of goofy. I was enjoying it.
Anything that frazzled the director was making me laugh. And that then he's got to go hat in hand.
One thing I'll say, though, is that it's about putting on a musical, but it's barely a musical up until we actually see the premiere. And that kind of surprised me. I think this is what you're talking about, Hunter, about how it really saves it for the end. I mean, this is kind of just like a drama comedy about putting on a show that happens to have little snippets until we get to the end.
Yeah. It is structurally very strange. I might even go as far as to say primitive, they just didn't know what they were doing to some degree, because Gold Diggers of 1933, which is the next Busby Berkley movie, made very shortly after this one, doesn't do that. It intersperses musical numbers throughout the movie, as you would normally expect a movie would, just to keep the energy up and keep your attention, and not make you wonder if this isn't even a musical. The Footlight Parade saves them all for the end, which is the third one. That saves them all for the end. I think maybe, I guess they were just experimenting with like, how do we structure this kind of musical where it's like not even, it's not like you have to put the songs at a certain point in the story because they're completely irrelevant to the story anyway.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, the first 15 minutes, did Dan pick the right movie? Is this what I was supposed to watch? Or like, did he tell me the right thing? But then, yes, it becomes a musical as it goes. They're getting ready for a musical, and then it is a musical.
1 hour and 10 minutes into it. Actually, I think I timed, I think it was 1 hour and 13. Because I was looking, it's like, how long is this segment? Because I remembered it being like half an hour. Like a third of the movie. It is not a third of the movie. It is 16 minutes, I think, worth of 15 or 16 minutes worth of Busby Berkley material.
Right at the end. But of course, we need to have Peggy step in for the lead. And there's like a little bit of business about like, oh, it's going to be the producer's new girlfriend and she wants to do it. But no, actually, it's going to be Peggy because the other girl can't do it or whatever. But we knew all along it was going to be Peggy.
Did we? Does the movie at any point indicate that she is a special talent?
Well, it's just that we're following her. That's the only reason. We know she's the protagonist, so.
She's got plot armor. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like, she actually like falls in the middle of one of the rehearsals.
That's a good
because
point.
She can't keep up. But Ginger Rogers, who gets Guy Kibbe, which is what she always wanted. She wanted a rich boyfriend.
Right.
She is very insistent that it be Ruby Keeler who take her place as the star, even though there's no particular reason to believe she's extra talented or even extra dedicated.
That's a great observation.
Well observed. I appreciated that by the end of the story, everybody has somebody. It's like there's no loose ends.
Right. Everybody gets somebody and everybody gets more or less what they want.
It's a very generous movie, yeah.
Yeah, so Peggy ends up becoming the star and she has to work hard to do it. Dorothy ends up with Pat. The producer ends up getting a pretty young thing on his side who's happy about it. And the director gets his big hit musical. So I guess his love, Brian, is the job.
Yeah, let's not undersell when we finally see the number. So we've talked a little bit about it. We get the Busby Berkley formations. Is there anything else that we want to say about finally the performance happens?
Yes. So let's do that. So they are awesome is what I want to say. They're very, very good. I think it's 3 numbers. And the first one has some interesting like moving set stuff and like cool way of lighting it so that like the background kind of absorbs it, so it kind of has a weird sense of space. I thought that was cool. But where it really gets good is the second number, where that's where we get all the like nifty geometric stuff that you're talking about, where it's like you see it from the top. When we say chorus, we mean like lots of people and it's mostly the women and they're like singing along and dancing along. But it's like, it's Brian, you actually talked about it when we talked about Teen Beach Movies, how it was just like a mass of like talented dancers on screen forming shapes. And that's like exactly what this is.
And they're all kind of on this turntable. Like the stage, pieces of the stage can move around. And so as this whole thing was going on, the film just kept rising in my estimation because pretty early into they're doing the show, they break any illusion that this could possibly be done on a stage. It's like suddenly there's like city streets. And it's like, where are we? Like we're no longer bound by the proscenium. This is not something that could be staged within the bounds of what we've been shown them putting together. But then like the dancers are spinning on this turntable where they're all kind of doing like a kick line. But then the cameraman like climbs, I guess, onto the turntable and somehow like spins through all of their legs.
Yes.
So he's underneath them, but the camera like shoops around. That was a crazy shot.
So I think this is the iconic shot of the movie. The like parodied in the Taylor Swift music video, Shake It Off. Like the camera soars under the legs of the dancers and the distinctive like V shape of the spread legs just it's like I don't know, it's like refracting the space. It's so interesting. And also, maybe all movies would have done it, code or not code, but like it's like tight fitting, very short garments. So you're like also appreciating the human form as you do this as well.
Yeah, even in the very first one, Shuffle Off to Buffalo with the break apart train. It's like that's how it starts. You know, it's got the song Shuffle Off to Buffalo. And the song actually reflects the imagery, which is not something you can take for granted in a Busby Berkley routine. Them going off to Niagara to have their honeymoon, but that like this train like just spreads apart, like it becomes like a cutaway drawing. And even then, like in the cut between the full size prop that's moving on the turntable that's spreading out, so you can see the inside of the train, both sides of the inside of this train. They cut to a new set that is distinctive from that full size prop. So you definitely, like you say, you definitely could not do that on the stage because you'd be stuck with that single full size prop, whether it's most useful for the second phase of this number or not. And it looks really cool. It's like very, very mechanically complicated to do.
Yeah. I thought this was awesome.
Ruby Keeler and Dick Powell have to clamber over it a little bit. This is funny.
That was wild. I was almost worried for the actor's safety when it like jolts apart.
Right.
And suddenly there's a gap between them. But yeah, Dan, they're going to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon. I've told Dan. So from primarily Arsenic and Old Lace, but old movies in my childhood, I just assumed everybody goes to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon. But no, it's only in 30s movies. But like every 30s movie, that's where they're going to go. You're going to get on the train. And I was specifically thinking, Dan, of The Crowd that we watched that has like beat for beat this scene, except it's not a song because it's a silent movie, of the newlywed couple gets on the train, like the sleeper train, to go to Niagara Falls, and it's their wedding night. And the awkwardness of, oh, we have to canoodle in this tiny little roomette on the train when everybody knows that's what we're here for.
was that also in It Happened One Night, or am I just thinking of The Crowd? But it I don't know. It definitely shows up in a lot of old movies. It's a good one. Good observation. But the most famous number of the three is the third one, which is the title track, 42nd Street. That's the one that AFI picked as like the number 97 musical number in American film history or something like that. But this one also has some cool stuff. It doesn't get quite as much fun geometric stuff as the middle number. But the third number, it ends with a really cool shot where like these actors are holding bits of what become like a skyscraper cityscape thing. But then it kind of actually morphs into like this sort of elaborate cityscape because the stairs and like the stage that they're on become the cityscape. I was like trying to process it. It's like it's complicated and very cool looking.
Yeah, and they come in with their backs facing the camera, and then they're holding the placards that become the cityscape. Then they turn around and they're just basically invisible. They're a cityscape, and then they spread apart, and there's like a cut where the stairs have been redressed to look like a skyscraper going up into the sky. And at the top of the stairs are Dick Powell and Ruby Keeler beaming right down at you.
Right. So that was a cool ending. And then we get a very short final scene of the director. I think it's the director, right? Hearing, oh, that was a good musical.
Well, okay, let's talk about what gets said in this final bit, because it's really important.
Okay.
So the director, who, remember, has been told at the beginning, he's like talking to his doctors, and like Dan said, they're like, if you do another musical, you're gonna die, because you got this hypertension and you're, one stressful event away from a heart attack. And so you're basically waiting for him to drop dead. I was thinking of William Jennings Bryan from Inherit the Wind, where that actually does happen to him at the end of the movie. But here he comes staggering out, having just put on this, like, transcendent musical production that defies the laws of physics, and everybody's ranting and raving that, yeah, it was a good show. But they're singing the praises of Peggy, the star actress, and they're like, man, people are going to give too much credit to that director, but it's all Peggy. And you see he, like, crouches down on the alleyway with his head in his hands, practically.
Right, shaking his head about it. But he's kind of smiling, so it's not, like, too cynical about it. But that's great, because it does call back that point earlier about how the actors and actresses get the credit rather than the director, when we've just kind of seen the director was holding this thing together by a thread the whole time. So, all right, before we move on to An American in Paris, this has been a good chat so far. What are our overarching thoughts? Anything we haven't said yet? Are we feeling pretty good at this point about how musical cinema is shaping up here?
It's a good start.
Do we think it's worth it? Should they keep going?
Worthwhile endeavor?
Or should they stop here in 1933?
Black and white, I think, is worth noting. Maybe obvious, but black and white movie, which American in Paris decidedly is not.
No, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
I found this to be, I used the phrase meat and potatoes earlier. I think it's like a solid, but like unremarkable backstage story. We can maybe talk when we give our rating, we can elaborate upon that. But I think it is like a functional and substantial story, or like substantial enough that I was engaged the whole time. Like I actually just enjoyed the story for the sake of the story, which I can't quite say I did for American in Paris. And there have certainly been other musicals where I haven't quite felt that same way. So on the one hand, I feel like there's always trade-offs. Like this one didn't have the musical numbers integrated in. And in fact, it didn't really even have them. So like from a musical perspective, the structure is kind of broken, like Hunter was talking about. But yeah, they're getting their sea legs on like, how do you properly do a musical while taking full advantage of like things you can do in a movie that you can't. So yeah. All right. American in Paris, 1951. Best Picture winner. Oh, I guess we didn't say too much about the director. Anything that you want to note about Lloyd Bacon? I don't know if I know too much about Lloyd Bacon.
Just that it's a great name.
I keep on wanting to call him Francis Bacon. But yeah, he directed, you know, a bunch of stuff for Warner's in the 30s. He's pretty good. Yeah, he's solid.
I guess one of the things I've learned reading a little bit about musicals is that the director of a musical movie is important, but it's also like not strictly the visionary the way you sometimes think in like auteur theory, where the director is kind of guiding everything. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit, there's like units that collaborate, and the dancers themselves are a little bit more involved in like more than you would think an actor might be. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually that's important. That is actually something I wanted to say before we did get to An American in Paris, is that you corrected yourself earlier about Busby Berkley being a director of those sequences. He is like physically directing it. He is doing that. And so Lloyd Bacon probably has some, I'm sure he has some sign off on it, although at a point, if I remember correctly, there came a point where Berkley was basically reporting to like the executives, not to his directors, about budgets and resources and stuff like that. And you can tell because there's a part where like Ruby Keeler isn't even moving her mouth, but she's singing. It's that it represents to some degree a return of silent cinema.
Okay.
And the ability to move the camera without the soundproof cage.
Oh, yeah. So that's an important thing.
Yeah, that's why he's able to get it underneath those women's legs.
So they're basically like adding in post the music on top of these things.
They're putting on top of it in almost every Berkley sequence. Not literally every, but almost every. It is not technically sound cinema. It is silent cinema with a dubbed over soundtrack. There is a bit in 42nd Street, I think, where Ruby Keeler is doing her tap dancing routine, because that I think is sync sound.
Oh, okay.
Because I do know in Gold Diggers of 1935 that the big burly tap dancing number in that, and you should watch that if you've ever seen that. It's great. There's like 100 people doing like stompy tap dancing.
Oh wow!
And it is they did have to do that one with live sound recording in order to because it's very difficult to mesh tap dancing with sound. It's actually one of the reasons Fred Astaire is considered so miraculously mechanically precise, is that he was actually able to dub his own tap dancing in a sound recording booth.
That is crazy impressive. So that's good to know. So it's kind of like I mean, this is true of any genre of cinema, any movement of cinema, but like the evolution of the technology is very heavily intertwined with the creative process as well. and your ability to like the way that people what they wanted to make was driven a lot by what the technology was, and vice versa. So speaking of like units of creatives, so one phrase that I have stumbled upon a lot in that book that I mentioned, and just reading about, I mean, American in Paris and many others, is the Freed unit. So Hunter, can you tell us what is the Freed unit?
Well, the Freed unit was a production unit at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Started in probably the early 40s. Don't quote me on that one. But Arthur Freed ran one of their production units that made musicals. He actually was not the first one. I think he might have been the first one to have like an independent unit that had its own budget and everything. But there were a couple other guys that ran, I guess they were their own units. You never really hear people talking about it. Like you read the histories, people don't care about these other two guys as much. Jack Cummings and Joe Pasternak. And I think they ran their own like independent units too. Joe Pasternak did a lot of Esther Williams movies, and Cummings did sundries, usually with not so much with the, I guess you might say, the A-list of talent. He didn't do so many movies with Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly mostly worked with Freed. Astaire kind of split his time because he was independent by the 40s. I don't think he was ever. I don't believe he was ever under like an exclusive contract with MGM, but still made a lot of movies with him. And he kind of like went back and forth between the units. But the Freed unit is the most famous. It's where Vincent Minnelli did most of his work, if not all of his work. And Vince Minnelli, of course, is probably the number one consensus pick for the director of film musicals in the 40s and 50s, with things like Meet Me in St. Louis, The Pirate. He also did Yolanda and the Thief, which is actually very important to the development of the film musical, especially at American in Paris. It might have the first dream ballet, Yolanda in Paris, because everybody, or Yolanda and the Thief, which is an Astaire movie, with Lucille Bremer, actually. Freed unit also did Ziegfeld Follies, which is an all-review show, which kind of very different from American Paris, because it's just all musical segments.
Right.
And vaudeville segments to buffer them out, which are sometimes welcome, but not always.
Did the Freed unit also do Singing in the Rain?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. They did Sing in the Rain, and they did Brigadoon with Vincent Minnelli did Brigadoon with them. And they eventually closed down with The Bells Are Ringing with Judy Holliday and Dean Martin, I think, which is also a Vincent Minnelli directed film. And that was in 1960. So it's kind of so some people kind of date the close of like the old Hollywood musical, or like this period, not necessarily to like Dr. Dolittle and its sort of debacle and catastrophe, but to the close of the Freed unit with in 1960. And you can definitely see the difference between something like Rodgers and Hammerstein adaptation like The Sound of Music or something like Camelot, and compare it to like Singing in the Rain. It's like very distinctive, very distinctive. For one thing, Singing in the Rain is about half as long, but that's just, one objective metric. Yeah, they made a lot of really good, or a lot of really cool stuff. Maybe not even he might not have been my favorite producer at a musical producer at MGM though. I don't know. It's hard to say.
So according to this book I read, the Freed unit, some of the things they were known for were really emphasizing what we kind of earlier called the Astaire style, where the numbers are pretty tightly integrated into the plot, although we'll talk about the dream ballet sequence, and doing a lot of innovation with regards to kind of the production of the numbers themselves, like kind of taking a little bit of what we were talking about with like the sets and how that was kind of mechanically interesting and like not something you could really do on a stage, and kind of pushing that to its next level with some movie magic type stuff and with like just really elaborate, colorful productions, and just kind of a really blissful production quality, like a lot of bright hues and elaborate costumes and sets and stuff. Like, I don't know if you've seen Singing in the Rain. I kind of think of the cutaway number that we have there as being kind of emblematic of like some of kind of the really cool things you can do with color and space. What do they call that sequence?
Broadway Melody.
Yeah. Of some of the interesting things you can do as a musical production in a movie that just kind of go beyond what you can do on a stage, and kind of a blurring artifice with the cinematic reality that we're seeing. But I had never seen this before this week. Brian, what about you? Had you seen this one before?
I had seen American in Paris a couple times, but watching it this week, I remembered almost nothing about it except like the opening scenes. So it must have been a long time. Like maybe I watched it in like 2005. I remembered when he's singing and dancing with the kids in the city street.
Oh yeah.
And like the introduction of people in the apartment building. But other than that, I didn't remember much.
So this movie is famous for its ending with this extremely elaborate, mostly ballet number that is based off of, if I understand correctly, a Gershwin number also called An American in Paris that was written not for this, but like was a number that already existed. So this movie took its title from a Gershwin song that actually proves like the centerpiece at the end of the movie, if I understood the history correctly. And one thing, we were talking about movie endings not too long ago, and we talked briefly about The Third Man and how like its vision of post-war Europe was like borderline post-apocalyptic, like crumbling buildings, no social order, everybody is dark and depressed and dreary. And this is also post-war Europe, and it's just like the exact opposite. It's like, it's not that there's not some angst, but like everybody's cheerful, everything's colorful, everybody's singing and dancing and falling in love.
Yeah, I was really surprised because it's only 1951. The end of the war was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the difference between being occupied by the Western Allies and the Soviets. Because that one's in Vienna.
That's true. Yeah. So this stars Gene Kelly. I think we've done 2 Gene Kelly movies, Brian, or at least 2 where he's prominent. One being Singing in the Rain, of course, and the other being a movie that was already shouted out today, which is the Monkey Trial one. What's it called again? Inherit the Wind.
Oh, right. He played the H.L. Mencken reporter guy.
Right, exactly.
This one much more similar to Singing in the Rain. So Singing in the Rain was the next year in 1952. Although in this one already he's got the like printer ink black hair dye in his hair.
And he's like the stereotypical handsome man. So one thing I've read about him before is that like he kind of battled a reputation for being like a little bit effeminate, which I never, in the past, I kind of, it's like, I don't really see that. I definitely saw it some in this. both in like some of the dances that he does, and he's just got like a grace bordering on daintiness about some of his movements and expressions.
Yeah.
So just yesterday, I watched a movie that I want to talk about briefly, which was from the 60s, and it's called What a Way to Go. Have you ever seen this, Hunter?
Yeah.
Okay. So it stars Shirley MacLaine as this widow who walks into the movie very, very wealthy, and she says that she's cursed. And she has gone through this string of husbands who she marries them because they are simple and like down to earth, not materialistic, because that's what she wants. She wants this like ascetic lifestyle, but she feels her curse is that she will make recommendations to these men that suddenly catapult them to wealth and fame and totally changes the paradigm, and they become wealth obsessed and then shortly thereafter die in ironic ways. And it just goes on, and it's like very eclectic and silly, but there were some memorable moments, and it's like a review of famous men of the period and some who would be famous soon. And so it's like the second film role of Dick Van Dyke. But one of the husbands towards the end is Gene Kelly. And so by this point he was like 52 or 53. But he's like the fourth or fifth husband. And in the story, he is a clown, basically. He has this job where he performs at a dinner theater nightly as a clown and like sings rhyming songs and stuff. And Shirley MacLaine's advice to him is like, what if you dropped some of the affectation, dude? Like, what if you weren't so, like frou-frou? And he immediately becomes like a Frank Sinatra crooner and is immensely successful. Yeah, much more manly. And it's basically exactly what you're saying.
It's kind of what happened with Gene Kelly, like himself to some degree. It's funny because the people who wrote What a Way to Go wrote Singing in the Rain, and had a history with Gene Kelly. I actually wonder if that is like a canned history or like sideways history of Gene Kelly's, like, maybe drop some of the like you said, affectations. So especially like the vaudeville stuff. He loved like really goofy vaudeville stuff, and you can see that in American Paris, but you can really see it in like an earlier role like the Pirate. And it's cool. I mean, it's still cool to watch because he's very athletic and like he can bounce around like nobody's business. But it is like, so that's entertainment, huh? It's not actually funny.
So Gene Kelly plays, I suppose he's the titular American in Paris, right? He's an artist in Paris, and he is not wealthy, but he lives a simple and fairly satisfying life, it seems, and he's friends with these two other artists, and I guess they're a songwriter and a singer. And this movie, it has plot, but it mostly has incident, where like a thing happens and then a thing happens, and like we just get little scenes and little vignettes. And not to bring everything back to DComs, Brian, but like sometimes I feel like Disney Channel movies are that way. And I was like, okay, there's some kindred spirit to these musicals and the Disney Channel movies, where it's like they have a premise and they have like scenes that they want to do, and they have actors they want to showcase, and they also don't entirely have like a script from start to finish. And this isn't that broken. Like you can tell that like these are people who like are clockwork, like making what they make. Like this is a very professional production, and it's not broken. But maybe it was just because I was watching it on the heels of 42nd Street, but I wasn't quite as sucked into these characters and like following their personality traits and their arcs to the extent that I was. So was that just a me thing, or do you actually also see that in the story?
I'm interested to hear what Hunter says. I was feeling similar to what you said, Dan. Just especially like compared to Singing in the Rain. Singing in the Rain sucked me in more. I was more invested in the like film history story. Here it's the story of a guy who is choosing between, does he want to shack up and mooch off of this wealthy blonde woman, or does he want to prey upon this like 19-year-old French ingenue who, at least at the start, wants nothing to do with him.
Right.
And it's like neither of these make me empathize very much with Gene Kelly.
I agree and disagree to some extent. So I do think it's a pretty mechanically sound screenplay, and that it's, you know, it's actually, I guess I said love triangle, or it's a love quadrangle, yeah, with the patron lady, the patroness. It's mechanically sound as far as like that goes. I do think that Oscar Levant's concert pianist character, it's funny that he is in the movie as much as he is, and is even forwarded in his own musical number, which is great. But like, they never really pay off on like his deal at all. He's just like there, and at the end, he still hasn't put on a show. I guess maybe he never will. So that's fine. But otherwise, I do think it's mechanically sound. As far as like the effective qualities of like this love quadrangle, yeah, it gets off on like the wrong foot. It 100% gets off on the wrong foot. So Gene Kelly is, like you said, a struggling artist. And by the way, he's a bad artist, right? We saw his painting. Like, those paintings are bad, right? They are like 19th century impressionism and not good for that. And he's doing it in 1950 or 51. I do not think they would excite many people. I mean, admittedly, the person that claims to be excited by them is more excited by Gene Kelly himself. So maybe.
So that I was wondering that. It's like, to what extent was this youngish wealthy woman just like, oh, here's a handsome artist, I'm gonna puff him up a little bit and he'll come spend time with me, and he looks like Gene Kelly, so I will I'll go along with, he's this great artist because I'm a high society person and can appreciate him. So this woman, I guess her name is Milo, as in Milo de Venus. That's a joke they make a couple of times. And so he's displaying this art, and she finds him and is like, oh, this is the only good art I've seen from a young artist in years. And I was like, it just kind of looks like somebody just drew a picture of the streets of Paris. Like, he was just sitting there and painting it. And it's like,
he stands on the corner and he paints buildings. So I was also thinking, I mean, if you see the kind of thing that Hitler painted, it's kind of like that. It's like stand and paint the buildings. I actually
had that thought. Yeah, it was like Hitler is actually a better painter. Because Hitler was just trying.
Right, it's like architecturally sound. You really see why he became friends with Albert Speer.
Yeah, you're just doing like bad impressionism.
I just want to point out that Hitler came up in this conversation not talking about post-war Europe, but talking about painting. So that's where we are.
Well, he was an aspiring artist.
There is a joke about him in the movie, so one is primed.
Okay, there you go. That's true.
Oscar Levant is trying to separate George Guattari and Gene Kelly before they reveal that they're after the same woman, and he just says, "Did I ever tell you about the time I gave a command performance for Hitler?" And it's just this, like, it almost doesn't feel like it's from the script. Can I just go on a tangent about Oscar Levant for a second?
Please do.
Like, I've only seen him in a few movies. But he's not in that many. He was in like 7 or 8, and he's a real concert pianist. Like that, that's why he's not in that many movies. But like, I guess like Concert Hall's gain was cinema's loss, because he's really funny. He's a really, really good comic relief character in every movie I've ever seen him in. He's also in Romance on the High Seas with Doris Day. And he's great in that. He's funnier in that than he is in this. And I think he's pretty funny in this.
I did really like the scene when he knows about the affairs and cross purposes at work and nobody else does.
Yeah, he's just sitting there drinking.
And he's sitting there in the middle of everything, and you're just seeing everything play across his face as Gene Kelly and the other guy are dancing and singing.
Mm-hmm. like dropping a cigarette into his coffee, getting it out, continuing to try to smoke.
That was very funny. It reminded me of the scene in Seinfeld when Kramer drinks and smokes at the same time. He says, "Here's to feeling good all the time."
Well, Brian, what I thought you were going to say when you said it actually made me think of Hitler is what I thought you were going to say. It actually made me think of
got to spread that out
in Titanic with Leo and his sketching, and it like catches the eye of what's her name, Rose, and is that her name, Rose?
Yes, it's
yeah,
Rose.
Jack and Rose. Huh?
Of course, yeah, and just like. Was he actually talented? And also you'll occasionally see memes online of like where he's sketching and he shows the illustration to her and it's like something totally unrelated or something goofy or whatever.
Yeah, my favorite is when it's a binder of Pokemon cards.
Oh, it's pretty good.
But yeah, something about the dynamic that was throwing me off. So the older woman, she was 28. The younger woman is 19 or 20, like the girl in Singing in the Rain. Who was that in Singing in the Rain?
Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds, yes. Gene Kelly is like 40.
Is he already that old at this point?
So he was 1 year younger than he was in Singing in the Rain. So he may have been 39.
Born in 1912. So he was somewhere between 38 and 40 when this was made.
So yeah, to be treating of course you don't have to play exactly your own age, but that he's treating the blonde patroness as like a old maid. It's like, not really.
It is weird casting. So yeah, there's this whole love quadrangle, and he's approached by her, and I get a big part of it is like he doesn't want to be her cat boy,
right?
And like, yeah, fair enough, but it's like, why not?
Right?
Yeah, I would want that.
She seems okay. The biggest problem is that she's pushy, right? She is pushy. Well, you guys have that in common. Going by how you have decided to approach Leslie Caron here, and it is because it's like 2 times over. She's like, leave me alone. And finally he does wear her down. It's just like, I know you need to get the movie started. That's fine.
Right.
But you didn't, it does make it a little bit sour. It spikes it a little bit to begin with. And eventually it's fine. It's fine. Like you can, eventually I forget about it. I forget how they met, where he's just pestering her like mad. Of course, the other thing is like her other suitor is even worse in some respects because he's like accidentally groomed her. I guess accidentally, but question mark. Because yeah, what is it, Dan? She was adolescent during the war. Her parents were in the resistance, and Georges Guattari's character hid her in like his basement or whatever, Anne Frank style, and decided that he would like to marry her now. And admittedly, that's 6 years later, but it's this is pretty creepy. This is not the ideal way to find your spouse.
While she was 13, like taking care of her. Yeah.
She wasn't 20 when she hid there either. She was 12 or 13.
Poor Gene Kelly, like this beautiful rich woman wants to help him pursue all of his life dreams.
Yeah. And she helps him quite a great deal.
Right.
Just go with it, man.
But no, so we've kind of already laid it out here, but the other kind of key characters are, so this young French woman, what's the character's name? It's like Lise, right?
Lisa, yeah.
Is it pronounced Lisa? Lisa?
They pronounce it Lisa.
Lisa. It's written down as Lise.
It's probably is it short for like Elizabeth?
I can see that, like Elizabeth. You got the Lise in there, yeah, sure. But this very distinctly young French woman, Leslie Caron. So like Gene Kelly basically stumbles into her because he's like trying to escape the other woman at this nightclub, sort of. And he like keeps approaching her, like you said. But the thrust of it is what the characters don't yet know, and what gradually gets pieced together is that the Leslie Caron character is dating one of Gene Kelly's friends, and not just dating, but soon to be married to him. So Gene Kelly keeps trying to go on dates while also getting his paycheck, I guess, but also like she is trying to navigate her growing feelings for Gene Kelly and the fact that she's supposed to get married. And that's basically the whole movie up until the end. It's just like incremental incidents and bits of progress on that. And there are a decent amount of musical numbers, and I found them pretty good in general. Like these were people who really knew what they were doing. Like I came down a little sour when we opened on like the story, but like this is a really effective production, and it's just so attractive. Like, man, they don't make movies that look like this anymore. The Technicolor, like sweeping beauty of Paris is like a major facet of the story. And I didn't look up. So was all of this on soundstage, or did they do any actually in Paris?
The impression that I got, and Hunter, you may actually know the answer, but my thought was they did some establishing shots at the very beginning where they show like the Arc de Triomphe, and then I thought the rest of it was all on a soundstage.
I'm pretty sure the rest of it's on a soundstage. The lighting conditions they're able to get and like the fidelity is pretty unlikely. I think pretty unlikely 1951 location shoot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is not a sentence. Sorry. Yeah, I think there's some location work, but not mostly it is in that opening, which actually jars aesthetically with like what everything else looks like. Certainly where he lives is a stage. Like like beyond obviously.
And there's a scene where they're hanging out under a bridge, and they start walking towards the bridge, and I was like 98% sure that they could not have actually walked under that bridge because it was a big painting.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we got to cut the scene here because they're about to hit the wall.
Oh, interesting.
The Looney Tunes wall.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real place in Paris. Like these are all real places in Paris, but they're not the real places in Paris.
So maybe we can say, what are some of our favorite numbers throughout this one? I mean, let's talk about the dream, setting aside the big dream ballet at the end, because I want to talk about how we built to that. But like, are there moments kind of building up to it that we really like? And one that I wanted to shout out is this tap number with the piano player that Gene Kelly, he's kind of like unbuttoned his shirt and he's doing silly faces and wearing a hat. But like, I mean, he's an incredible dancer. And these takes are like, I mean, this is the thing that always gets me when you watch these old movies, is the takes are like 90 seconds long. So they were just absolutely nailing it. These for long shots. And it really just kind of bowls you over when you get that continuous motion of just like all the talent and precision of the dexterous acts that you're seeing. So that was one that struck me. But Brian or Hunter, were there any moments here that kind of call out to you?
Oh no, I mean I agree with you about that. About like just the sheer stamina of it is like pretty impressive. Sometimes being able to maintain that pace for like a minute or two,
right?
Pretty difficult. I really like Oscar Levant's daydream about putting on his concert where he is everybody.
This was so good
in his orchestra. I don't know how I'd forgotten about this number. Yeah, but it was actually a surprise to me because I've watched this movie once. It was about 10 years ago. I've actually seen the stage show as well.
Huh.
Well, yeah, because they made a stage adaptation of this. It's actually kind of sucked because I was in the like cheap seats of it. Everybody is like more like an ant in Paris, But yeah, it surprised me because I'd just forgotten and completely about it, and it's just really funny because they're editing from him on his piano, which this guy's a concert pianist. plays the heck out of that piano, to him on the xylophones, to the drums, which he probably does not play. You can kind of tell he's an expert at one of these and just understands the musical concepts on the others. But then he's also the conductor, and then he's finally in the audience, clapping and carrying on. You're so great, colossal, bravo, encore. It's just funny and very, very golden too. Like a lot of there's some cool color choices even before we see even before the American in Paris ballet at the end. And Vincent Minnelli is very famed for, having a great sense of bold color. I do not always agree with that assessment. I actually think he tips into gaudiness very readily. If you ever seen Yolanda and the Thief, I think you'd agree. It's like a bunch of colors on this beige background, and it's Dream Ballet. But this movie, I think, actually might be my favorite as far as like Vincent Minnelli's direction goes. And like a lot of it is Gene Kelly too, but like Vincent Minnelli, you can tell is actually like making suggestions even during the parts that Kelly is overseeing mostly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because the color is pretty cohesive throughout.
Yeah. The color is very bold, very memorable. I want to shout out when we first meet this group of artists who live in this apartment building, the Frenchman who, what did you say his name was? The actor is Georges someone?
No, George Guattari that's the name of the actor who plays the singer Henri.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. He is describing his girlfriend to Gene Kelly. Oh, she's so great. She does all these things. She's like multi-talented, but we're being told these things. We, the viewers, see her. Gene Kelly does not see her, and therein lies the situational irony that follows. But we're seeing her do this ballet in front of different solid color backgrounds, and it's like rooms where everything is red or everything is green or everything is yellow, as like the different aspects of her personality are described. And through it all, she's doing these elaborate ballet positions. She's very flexible. It's like long legs and improbable positions. That's memorable.
Yeah, Leslie Caron's she's really good. She was one of the best dancers in film musicals of the 50s. Yeah, I wish I could do some of the stuff that she does in this. It's amazing. Yeah, I really love that sequence too. The colors in the room, the color coded rooms, and like the clashes with her attire.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are really great, especially in the Technicolor treatment. So it's very like blaring. It's pretty awesome.
Right. So one thing I want to we can talk about the big climax of this here in a minute, but the one thing I want to say is we've talked about Gene Kelly, and we kind of at the beginning we kind of laid out this thesis. There was kind of two approaches to musical cinema, and that this was kind of more of the Astaire school than the Berkeley school. But, Fred Astaire is not involved in this, to be clear. But I guess Gene Kelly he kind of fills the role of what Fred Astaire would sometimes do, if I understand correctly, which is to architect and to some extent even direct these dance numbers. So a lot of Gene Kelly's movies, he's even credited as the co-director. Like Singing in the Rain, I believe he's the co-director. So if I'm to understand correctly, Hunter, Kelly would have been the guy who kind of designed the dance, some of the dance segments and all of the dance segments. I don't know. I'm asking, is that right?
Yeah. Pretty much. I'm not 100% sure about this film, but generally speaking, Gene Kelly would have been the predominant voice in making decisions about even in terms of like shot scales and stuff. He definitely would have been the guy making those decisions here, especially since this one doesn't have, I'm pretty sure that Stanley Donen is not involved in this movie at all, and that was Gene Kelly's most profitable in some respects creative partner. Stanley Donen was the other co-director of Singing in the Rain, and he sometimes gets short sold on like how much he was responsible for like the choreography and stuff. But yeah, he wasn't. I don't believe he was involved here. I actually just looked it up and I was like, wait, am I misremembering that? No, yeah, they eventually did have a falling out. Gene Kelly married his wife.
Oh man.
God. Yeah, it didn't endear. It didn't generate a lot of affection between them, obviously.
Yeah, I think that would do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
Brian, do you remember the other Stanley Donen movie we discussed on the pod?
Well, we did talk Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, there was one other one.
Did he do one of the Bedazzled?
He did. He did the British Bedazzled. So
I watched like 30 minutes of that movie once. Does it get better?
It stays pretty much what it is. So if you're not on its wavelength, then probably not.
Yeah. As far as what's good and what's bad, you know, people come down pretty hard on the remake, it seems, the Brendan Fraser movie. But the British original is like more satirical and bitter. And
very chaotic, yeah. But sorry, you were about to say something about either Donen or Kelly, I think, Hunter.
Oh, I was just going to say that Gene Kelly directed a lot. He eventually started directing his own movies, like just all, you know, full tilt directing the whole thing. He was Singing in the Rain. He's, you know, co-director there. He's co-director on It's Always Fair Weather. He was able to get Stanley Donen back. I forget if that's where that. I know they've been having troubles even before like the real personal stuff happened. I forget if that post-dated that or predated that. But that was in 1956. And that's about when like this kind of musical, like just the Hollywood Dream Factory musical starts like petering out, starts, at least as far as audiences go. I actually really love It's Always Fair Weather. So it's a really nice, like another post-war movie. It's more like about post-war ennui, about like three guys who like 10 years after the war are like just not where they want to be, you know? And like they get back together. They made a promise to get back together and they do get back together and they're like, they kind of hate each other, but then they learn to like each other again. Fun movie, very messy screenplay wise, but pretty cool. And he was directing like other like non-musical movies as well by this point. There's but the big one is Invitation to the Dance. That actually might have soured him a little bit on musical film. I don't want necessarily want to psychoanalyze him, but like that was like a Fantasia for musicals. Well, Fantasia is musical, but Fantasia like thing where he was taking, he was trying to do it like high art style for real. Like it was like all American in Paris ballets.
Oh, interesting.
And he got the chance to do that because of post-war currency restrictions meant that MGM had a ton of money just sitting in banks in Europe. And they released some of that to him to make this in France. And so he tried to take advantage of European talent, as much European dancing talent as possible. So like most of the other people in the movie you won't necessarily recognize because they're like from actual like real deal dance troops in Europe, ballet corps in Europe. And it's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's something. It's just very, it kind of does one of them's LaRue. Is it LaRue, LaRonde, The Ring, where everybody is cheating on everybody else?
La Ronda, I think you're thinking of.
LaRonde, yeah, LaRonde. Sorry, yeah, that's right. One of the sequences is like that. It's very much like trying to take like the Dream Ballet to the narrative dancing in pantomime to the utmost.
Okay.
And people didn't really dig it that much.
So that you said that was a Gene Kelly joint. What was that one called?
Invitation to the Dance.
Invitation to the Dance. So that's interesting because that's kind of a nice segue into talking about what is surely the most famous part of American in Paris, which is, so one thing we haven't said, where we've kind of alluded to, 42nd Street is 90 minutes long or 89 minutes long. American in Paris is an hour and 52 or 53 minutes long. So, well, first of all, not very long movies in general, which is nice. But you get to the point in American in Paris where, like, it's clear that Gene Kelly is finally going to get together with Leslie Caron. Then it's like, well, hold on, but there's still 17 minutes left in this runtime, and that's because we need this number. And I like what you just said about, like, I don't recall exactly the wording you used, but essentially pushing dance in movies into its like peak artistic form. And that's kind of what it feels like they're trying to do with An American in Paris is Dream Ballet. And so this is like a segment of, again, it's almost like, I think it's 17 minutes. I think I've seen that number cited.
16 or 17, yeah.
Of just this really elaborate and just mind-bogglingly produced in every aspect of filmmaking, like production, choreography, things they're doing with the camera, costumes, sets, the lighting. It doesn't really have much to do with the story itself, or if it did, it's very loose. It's more of like capturing the feeling of falling in love in Paris in a sort of golden season. But this is like, you just can't take your eyes away from it for, again, it goes on and on and on. And I was also thinking of the finale of La La Land. I mean, people compare that to Jacques Demy mostly, but this is kind of structured like that, where you have this really elaborate sequence that is just going through all these visual styles. And just like the end of La La Land does that, here we have it, and it just goes on, and it's so gripping and I mean, truly a visual achievement, and it does so much with dance. And I don't know, I thought I can see why this is what lives on. This is the legacy of this movie to some extent, in addition to being a Best Picture winner, which automatically locks its place in history. But
wait, An American in Paris won Best Picture?
Did we not already say that?
Oh my God. Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Okay. A couple things about this Dream Ballet. So I want to, as we go along this month, think about what is our big picture of what is a 50s musical like? What is a 70s musical like? And I don't know that we're going to necessarily be able to do that from the individual films that we happen to pick. But maybe we can spitball. You know, we can think about what are some things that we have seen from this decade. The film that we're choosing to focus on, how does that relate to that impression that we have? And what do we think? If we're going to go and tell somebody, oh yeah, I watch 70s musicals, I watch 80s musicals, what are we going to be able to say about them as a thing in a time? And so what I have gathered from 50s musicals is that Dream Ballet is huge. Gotta have a Dream Ballet. Even if it just drags on and seems disconnected, it's like you gotta have it, because that's what a 50s musical has. So I just recently watched Oklahoma, and there's a big Dream Ballet in the middle of Oklahoma, where Laurie takes opium from the peddler, and then for 15 minutes she's dancing and evaluating, is she going to be with Curly or is she going to be with Judd? And she shouldn't be with Judd. That's like, don't even waste your time on that. But we're getting that as like a long drawn out thing. And it also reminded me, Dan, of when we watched 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. There's this like 12-minute sequence of ballet, and we said back when we watched that, it's like, this seems kind of out of place and long. But no, it's like you have to have this.
Interesting. So that's like a fixture. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up Oklahoma, because the stage show is frequently credited with creating, or at least popularizing, the Dream Ballet as a device, as a thing unto itself. Yeah, Oklahoma's, at least the film version of Oklahoma's, is kind of weird because one thing I love about it, I'll put it in a positive light. One thing I like about An American in Paris is that the actors who are in the movie are also the actors in the Dream Ballet. That is not always the case with these. It's not the case in Oklahoma. It is distracting when it is not the case.
Interesting. Well, actually, so I had seen Oklahoma before. I've seen it on stage. I've seen the 50s movie. It says 1955. But the one that I just watched was a production from 2000 where it was like, it was a stage production that they filmed.
Like a pro cam.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the 1954, 5.
Yeah, it says 1955, which, I mean, is more on point, more pertinent, so I wasn't going to clarify. But since we're clarifying, the version I watched has young Hugh Jackman as Curly. And so it was like right before he was Wolverine.
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of funny. Have either of you seen Blue Moon yet?
Unfortunately, no.
So it's not a perfect movie, but Ethan Hawke is just so good in it. He's like, his career has been leading to this like juiciest of roles, but he plays Hart, who was the guy who partnered with Rogers before Rogers and Hammerstein. And the entire movie is set on the night of the premiere of Oklahoma. And so Hart is kind of portrayed as this more sardonic, cynical type than Hammerstein. And they get some digs in on Oklahoma in that. So if you have thoughts on Oklahoma, you should at least check out Blue Moon to see what it has to say. That's one of like 17 movies that I have in a review drafted in my drafts folder that I just haven't actually published on the website, The Goods Reviews. But
have you, Dan, seen Oklahoma?
No, so I have not seen Oklahoma. So I have seen Blue Moon talking about Oklahoma, but have not actually seen Oklahoma.
Do you have a day to kill? It's pretty awesome.
It's like you should probably go and watch Oklahoma.
It's good.
Okay.
It's okay. It's fun.
Hunter, was there anything you wanted to add on just like characteristics of this dream ballet that's so famous in American in Paris? Anything either in rebuttal to or an extension of what I said?
Oh, see, just an extension. Like I perpetually misremember that it is a very close retelling of the movie story. And it is not.
No, yeah.
I feel like it gets at some of the idea, like the basic stuff in the movie, but it's like very early on in the Dream Ballet, he seems to be accosted by these like ghoulish women in white and in red, who I'm pretty sure are Nina Fox's character. But that doesn't really come back up later, nor does Leslie Caron's betrothed either, unless the cuirassiers that dance with her are intended to be George Guattari's character, which I don't think maybe they are. Maybe it's like just very dreamlike in its symbolism, but I don't think it really tells the story. La La Land really does tell the story in a clear way. Like, right. You probably have to have seen the movie to really understand exactly what's happening, but it is like a one-to-one analog, more or less, of the movie you just watched. And I do think that. Yeah, go ahead.
And that one is also doing not just a retelling of it, but like a what if for different aspects of it. Like if this played out a little differently, right?
Right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it is like clearly it is that story just with this twist. Whereas like it more like is like getting at some of the feelings of it, of like the pursuit and like the embraces, and then she also has to leave for a little bit, and he has to run around Paris and hope that she'll be there. Which also gives you the ability to have all these different sets that are very fanciful. And I gave him a lot of grief for his terrible paintings. I think the reason the paintings do need to be like that, and not really necessarily in conversation with like 50s modern art styles, is that you need them to justify the sets that you get in the American in Paris Ballet, which are impressionistic in something like the same way, but it's a lot cooler when they're blown up to life size than they are when.
Man, I didn't even make that connection. That it's like taking the paintings he did, and that's what he's dancing around in. That's kind of obvious now that you say it, but that did not click for me when I was watching it.
He goes into it. He goes into yeah. That's how it begins at the ball, which we didn't even talk about the ball. That's crazy true. Black and white ball at the students' artist.
Dude, those costumes. That would be a fun Halloween costume, Brian.
It's like kind of terrifying, I think. It's like terrifyingly anonymizing because all the costumes, you're going to a costume ball, but all the costumes have the same colors. It would be so easy to get like lost in that crowd.
Yeah, I like that they say we're going to an art school party.
But yeah, it begins with I think it's like they reverse the image of like a fan blows his torn apart draft of a painting. He's torn it in two, and they reverse the footage of a fan blowing it in two, and it comes back together so that he can re-enter this fantasy of like how things were and how things could be, I guess, or could be in his heart.
It's just more about the feeling, like you said.
So. Yeah, it's more about the feeling. It looks really cool. There's some like really cool like silhouette work too. Like when it gets kind of like it starts out like some of it's like kind of erotic, then it gets kind of like melancholy maybe, or like because he is mourning his love choosing someone else, and I love that rose that he's holding at the end. That's sweet.
Yeah. Important, I think, to say that right before this big 15-minute plus sequence, George, the French singer, finally puts the pieces together. Finds out that Lisa and Gene Kelly have this relationship going on the side, and that the engagement between Lisa and George stands to pull Gene and Lisa apart. And so this is being mulled over by everybody. It's like, I don't know if Gene Kelly knows that the guy that she's going to leave with is George. I don't know if he knows that, but George knows now. And so everybody's mulling it over as the big dance sequence happens.
Yeah. Yeah, he knows. He does know because he sees them together. Yeah, it is kind of funny. This whole dream ballet takes place, it's like 17 minutes long, but it actually feels like Henri's character, or George's character, he basically just has like a 30-second conversation with Leslie Caron and says like, "Oh, I didn't understand that you're in love with someone else. You should probably go back to him." And that's what happens at the end.
Right. And so after all the dancing, that's what happens. It's like she runs back in and then it says the end.
Right. Very abruptly. And actually, that was another thing. It's like 42nd Street also has this really long ending that's like just kind of overstimulating almost. And then there's like one last little scene to cap it together. Here it feels even more perfunctory. It's just like they're together. Yay, the end.
They got together. They tied up. They tied up their romance. What do you want, Dan? You want a sequel with them when they get a divorce in Paris?
that would be kind of funny. The follow-up, the domestic drama.
You're still a terrible painter.
A Road to Morocco, a series where it's just a different city every time. Like 10 installments.
Oh, yeah.
An American in Bombay.
Brian, if you want to get me one of those black and white outfits, I would wear it for Halloween this year.
I'll keep an eye out.
All right, so those are 2 movies. 2 decades. I feel like pretty ended up having interesting things to tie them together, but also like kind of being representative of things that were going on in that decade. I wanted to just read one little more segment from the book that I've been talking up from this author, Janine Basinger, I don't know. But here's what she had to say about American Paris. She actually wrote a lot about it. She has like a couple pages on it. But she wrote, "An American in Paris is the epitome of a musical that knows how to present precise meaning with all its numbers, but the reason it is best remembered today is the 17-minute American in Paris ballet, which speaks to viewers in terms they can easily understand. It tells the story and reveals inner emotions already established. It confirms prior information, which does not diminish its visual impact. The ballet taking place inside Kelly's head immediately after he believes he has lost Karen, the girl he loves, retells story of his life in Paris. I would kind of debate that claim, as we've already talked about.
I need a point-by-point exegesis on like exactly how it does that.
He is seen to love the stimulation of Paris with its colors, art, freedom, and European ambiance. Now that I do agree with. I feel like that is pretty well captured. It's a visual cleansing of the palette. She concludes after she says a little bit more after that. But anyways, yeah, so that is An American in Paris, 1951. Added to the Best Picture winner list, Brian. I guess we didn't say that earlier, so you were surprised by that revelation.
Yes, I'll put a box around it on our spreadsheet to indicate Best Picture.
All right. So, any other thoughts, Hunter? Do you have any, like, give us one more? What's the next movie we should watch? The next musical we should watch?
I mean, like, I don't know. The next, like, in this series?
No, just us being musical lovers. Give us a movie.
I love Good News. Good News is a pretty great musical.
Okay.
It's underseen, but it's pretty great, pretty well regarded by those who know. Most any movie with the champions, with Marge and Gower Champion.
Huh. I don't know if I've seen anything by them.
Marge Champion. She was Snow White. Sort of. She was the life reference for Snow White for her dancing scene.
Oh. And Good News is Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, is that right?
No, that's it's Peter Lawford and June Allison. So like,
okay.
Even like,
I'm getting it mixed up with another one.
Not necessarily the A team there. Joe McCracken is in it. She's best known from the stage because she didn't do a lot of work in musicals, but she's in that. She's got a pretty killer dance number in that. Yeah, it's just that one's just like a goofy college comedy. It's kind of like an Archie comic that was a musical.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. That actually sounds appealing to me, so it's good.
Yeah, it's fun.
Cool. Well, I think we are ready to rate. So I will talk us in. Is It Good is our signature section where we each give the movies a rating on our 8-point goodness scale, ranging from very not good, which is a 1 out of 8, to our masterpiece rating, toward a good. Brian, we will start with 42nd Street. Is 42nd Street good?
This one really grew on me as it was going along, but as we've talked about it here today, it's like I kind of had a good time all throughout. You know, I liked the characters, this peek behind the scenes of the making of this musical. Like, everybody feels kind of real, and they managed to make everybody reasonably empathetic. And I found it funny. And then it builds finally in the show being put on. We get to see what it was all about, and it like breaks the laws of reality. Really innovative shots, and yeah, who knows what the story of the show is about, because it just seems totally fragmented. But the sets are awesome, choreography awesome, innovative camera work, and then just to see the director slump down at the end. And in the end, like, it was a success, but it was exactly as he predicted it would be. He still is unfulfilled. He still is going to drop dead someday. I really liked it. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 8. Exceptionally good.
Very nice. Hunter, is 42nd Street good?
It is good. It is good. I'm viewing it in comparison to like its fellows, like Gold Diggers of 1933 and 1935, and it's not as good as those. It's not as good as those. It is probably closer. It might be closer to the best of Busby Berkley than to the worst, though. So yeah, 6 out of 8. That is good, right?
Very good. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of there with you guys too. I really enjoyed this. I was hooked by the characters and the story and the backstage drama. and the little bits of like musical performance we get throughout, and then it like blows your hair backwards with the musical performance at the end. And whether this is like outright a detriment to have that structure, feel kind of mixed about, because it does kind of not really work as a musical. It's like if you watch it for a musical, you're going to be kind of frustrated until the ending, and then you're going to have a lot to feast on. But like also, if you are carried not about it as a musical, it doesn't really make sense, and it's just an elaborate musical number. Like narratively, it doesn't make too much sense. So in that regards, it's like a little neither fish nor fowl, but it works. It's not. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I think it does work, and I like it quite a bit. And I'm going to give this a high end, very good. I think this is a very satisfying film. And I will say two more things about it. One, just to emphasize that I thought it felt more modern than I was expecting it to, and that's because of like the frank pre-code discussion of the relationships and the incentives and the desires of these people that you would get a little bit obfuscated if it was made, I don't know exactly when the code came into effect, a few years later. But I liked that. I thought it still felt kind of fresh, despite being almost a century old. The last thing I'll say is I grew up listening to Billy Joel CDs, and one of his most famous CDs, one of his most famous albums is called 52nd Street. And so I'm going to put the over under on like 1.5 times when I'm listening back to this, and I accidentally said 52nd Street instead of 42nd Street when we were talking about this movie. So I kept thinking of that. It has absolutely nothing to do with the movie. The album does, but that was just something I kept thinking about. So then we move on to An American in Paris. Brian, is An American in Paris good?
I have mixed feelings on this one. The colors and the production, awesome. The choreography, impressive. I mean, Gene Kelly can just go and go and go in an uncut take. And, of course, the ballerina, extremely talented as well, Karen. And it just doesn't totally gel for me. Like, the story is a little thin, and I don't really like the characters. I like the funny piano guy who imagines the concert where he's all the roles. I think the meaning of that to me is that he's kind of mulling over, like, what does artistic success mean? He sees Gene Kelly potentially having success, having found this patron, and he's wondering, well, can this happen for me? Or like, what is my ultimate goal? I wish we got more of the piano guy, because I don't find Gene Kelly very likable. I don't know. To me, it's a no-brainer. I would check up with the patroness. It's like, okay, story over. It's like, yeah, sounds like a perfect arrangement to me. Happy ending. Yeah. No, instead of chasing around after this girl who's too young for him and seems to be put off by him, I guess he wears her down. I'm going to land at the highest 4, because the craft, very impressive. I just wish that I liked Gene Kelly a little more in this movie. I did not like this thing as much as I liked Singing in the Rain. I mean, I think I gave Singing in the Rain a 7.
Hunter, what about you? Is An American in Paris good?
It's good. Yeah, it's probably very good. I actually think I liked it a little bit more this time than the last time I watched it, just because it does get like just reduced down to just the American in Paris ballet, and like it does have more than that. It does have just as far as like dance numbers go. Now, but I am also a bit of two minds about it, like you guys. I do think it is weaker than it needs to be. It starts off much weaker than it needs to. It's still, I think, the best musical that MGM ever put Leslie Caron in. She's really great. I like Leslie Caron. Her, like, man, she like, look at those like hops she does on point in the ballet.
That was blowing my mind.
It's like how did you not
snapping tendons? Yeah.
How did you not break your feet doing that?
That's real talent.
She's total talent. And of course, Daddy Long is at Fox, not at MGM, but like her other MGM musicals are The Glass Slipper, which is almost okay. It's a Cinderella deal.
Okay.
And like they really like to write roles for her that were like really, really childish. This is actually one of the more adult roles she got at MGM somehow. Even though she is like young in this and young feeling in this, she like in the Glass Slipper, she is basically a baby. In Lily, like, and man, if this one is like troublesome, Lily is like, Lily would be like if George Godore's character won. Yeah, it's, and also he was mean. it's not great. But yeah, this movie is this is solid. I guess I'd go light 7 out of 8, because I'd give it an 8 out of 10. And like, how does that
that sounds about right. So an 8 out of 10, the way when I math it out for Letterboxd, an 8 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5 is like, could be either a 6 or a 7.
Yeah,
so
it'd be a hard 8, a relatively, or a solid 8.
Yeah. I'm gonna give An American in Paris a very good, synthesizing basically what you guys are saying. Not really disagreeing, but I guess it's just kind of, what do you weigh? And I think it's entertaining throughout. I think the musical numbers, even before you get to the end, they're a lot of fun, and just the production is just off the charts vivid. And Gene Kelly's a fun screen presence, even when he's got that smarminess, and he's kind of not always the most likable. But I just, I was, even though the story didn't really work for me, the production is just terrific. And the cast is pretty good. And I mean, well, the key cast members are excellent. And I can see why this was the one that caught the Academy's attention. I don't know what like the award season cycle was like in the 50s, but like this kind of being the payoff on the development of the musicals, and like really just having this keystone segment at the end that's just these craftsmen delivering just really outstanding, like almost generationally vibrant and beautiful. And this one payoff that, structurally it's a little bit odd because it's the ending and it doesn't really have too much to do with the story, and it keeps going and going, but it's just so tremendous to watch and well made. So I'm going to go very good. And I honestly, I put the two movies in a similar boat with like very different strengths and weaknesses, but both very satisfying watches for me. So that is the kickoff of our musical decades month. This has been really fun. It's been a little long, but you know what? That's the nature of kicking off a theme month and trying to learn your lessons about the history of musicals. We don't necessarily need to go this long each week, Brian, but I thought this was good. Before you tell us what we're going to watch next week, Brian, Hunter, anything in particular you want to pitch? I know you write on Kinemalogue. You do these fun theme, in quotes, weeks that go on for years. But I always enjoy with them.
Yes, they do. That's not a character flaw. That's charming.
Anything else you want to pitch?
Nah. not as such. I'm going to go back to the Bond movies pretty shortly. That's actually going to be picked back up pretty shortly. Certainly no later than trying to get like year-end stuff. You know, I'm trying to watch movies that I find interesting that were nominated for Oscars, and just general stuff. Oh, speaking of musicals, though, you should watch The Testament of Anne Lee.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I caught that, and yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
Did not realize it involved Brady Corbett, which that would have been a demerit because I was not a big fan of The Brutalist. But his partner Mona Fastvold, yeah, she's a better director than he is. They both wrote The Brutalist, but I think she's the better filmmaker.
Yeah, I've heard pretty much everyone I know who's seen it has been like, "Oh, this is the sleeper of the year. You got to go check this one out." And
yeah, it's perplexing how it didn't get nominated for an Academy, or at least like Best Actress. I'm really kind of surprised. I don't know why it wouldn't have. That's not even necessarily like a personal opinion. It just feels like that's what it was going for, and that's what they would have wanted. I don't know.
It's Amanda Seyfried, right?
She is good, yeah. Amanda Seyfried, yeah.
Yeah.
interesting musical.
I will check it out. Brian, what does week 2 of our musical decades month look like? What decades are we checking off next?
All right, I'm taking the 60s and the 70s. Take them off the board, Dan. They're done. They're gone. Because the movies I want to talk about are Mary Poppins and sort of its spiritual successor, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. So 1964, 1971.
Cool.
Same director, same songwriters, a lot of the same cast and creative team. So I don't know that there'll be that much difference between them, but we can talk about what there is. We can talk about their place in time. And we could talk about Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah.
Happy 100th recent birthday, Dick Van Dyke.
Man, the guy's immortal, maybe.
I know. Crazy. And Brian, the climax of Bedknobs and Broomsticks is among the scenes that have been brought up most on this podcast for a movie that we haven't actually discussed.
Exactly. So it was due. I thought now was the right time. I talk about that scene all the time. One of my favorite movie scenes. And so we'll get to dive into why.
Cool. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Hunter. I hope everybody stays warm and has a good February as we kick off this high concept, taxing, overlong, but I am excited for theme month.
Hey, buddy, that's musicals. Taxing and overlong.
Have a good one.